Hi, I'm Clarissa, and you are listening to Listen and Know, a premenstrual disorder health podcast. This podcast is for women who are struggling with premenstrual disorders, PMDs. I'll be talking about everything from symptoms to treatments to coping strategies. If you're new to PMDs, you're not alone. Millions of women around the world suffer from these conditions, and yet PMDs are still relatively unknown and misunderstood. That's why I'm here. I want to raise awareness of PMDs and help women who are struggling to find the support they need. I'll be releasing new episodes every week, so be sure to subscribe and leave me a rating and a review. And if you have any questions or topics that you'd like me to cover, please let me know. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join me on this journey to better understand and manage PMDs. Please note, this podcast might bring up topics that are sensitive in nature because we share personal experiences with PMDs. Hey friends, welcome back to Listen and Know. Today we're actually going to do something different than I haven't done so far in the past couple episodes, and that is to have a day where we have PMDD Real Talk. So what this entails is me throughout my cycles pulling thoughts and experiences, not only through mine, but also from other people, forums that I'm a part of, and clients that I have who are willing to share anonymously the things that they go through. I really want to shed light on how PMDD or any sort of premenstrual disorder in general really affects our mindset and how we view the world. It's kind of like you're wearing extremely dark sunglasses in an already kind of darkened room. Really hard to see things clearly, maybe even prescription sunglasses, and just not really being able to be 100% ourselves. However, in the back of our head, we are still there. It's kind of like, that there are two sides of you. I like to explain PMDD like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type of experience when it comes to what goes on inside your brain when PMDD talks versus when, my normal Clarissa self talks. So today I'm going to get kind of raw and real with you and vulnerable with you. If this is not something that you're interested in, you're welcome to skip over it. But I think that it will allow more people to have courage to speak up when they are not feeling okay, and maybe give them even some words or some language to use to be able to explain to maybe a spouse or a friend or a parent what they're going through, because I know that I didn't have that. And I have really appreciated that I have found places to be able to relate to those who have what I'm going through. This also might be able to be a good thing just in general mental health, to understand how distorted thoughts work and what they sound and look like in somebody else's head. Everybody has some distortion of thought, but when you're experiencing some sort of mental illness or mental disorder, that those distorted thoughts are heavy, and they're often, and they're very powerful in how you end up acting throughout your day. So we're just going to kind of head in. I am taking today 5 or 6 questions that I have been asked if I have these types of symptoms, and explaining a little bit about how I feel when I do have these symptoms, or if I don't. I just wanted to share the things that I had been asked. So the very first thing that I have been asked in just recent time is if I feel insecure or have internalized shame. I think that there is a sort of sorrow that I experience constantly, knowing that the ebb and flow of PMDD will come and go. So first of all, let me backtrack. If you are new to this, you might want to go listen to the episode on premenstrual disorders and get kind of an idea of where we're headed. This is specifically through premenstrual disorder lens, this podcast. And so I will relate my experiences and my coaching and all this expertise that I share through the lens of premenstrual disorders. So just putting that out there. But there's always some sort of underlying sorrow that I feel for myself and those around me in knowing that there will be an ebb and a flow, knowing that PMDD will come back and it's not just like this one and done thing. Like there is a no happily ever after for me in PMDD. Specifically, it's the worst when I have maybe had some sort of small outburst of PMDD, uh, or after I come out of the fog of PMDD. That is specifically where it's so, so bad, the shame, mainly because we are kind of in a very destructive stage during PMDD, those who experience it, at least I am, where it's really hard to manage any sort of extra stress, any drop of stress versus like a bucket of stress. If you're going through something stressful, it just exponentially explodes PMDD symptoms, or PMDD symptoms will explode that stress. There is definitely a sort of shame, feeling like I am the worst. I am the broken one. And in all honesty, like sometimes that's a pretty honest statement. Like my body really doesn't work right. And they don't know, people don't know how to solve this PMDD. People don't know how to manage it very well yet. And even with all the science advancements that we've had so far, we're not quite there. And I do know that there would probably be a part of my family or my friends that would do better with somebody who could stay emotionally and mentally consistent, because I can't. Uh, that's just not who I am with PMDD. The second one, well, and to go back to drop into that just a little bit further, I think the shame was even greater when I was living in my parents' home, not married, just because we want to please our parents so much. And at that point in my life, I didn't know what was wrong with me, which will lead into our next question. But I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought that I had sinned or broken rules where I deserved that sort of mental health. And really, like the phrasing that I use often is scum of the earth. In a lot of my journal entries, in a lot of the conversations that I have, like that is truly sometimes how I feel during PMDD episodes. So yes, there is a lot of internalized shame, and it's excruciatingly not only mental, but emotionally and physically painful. It just eats. All right. So the second question that I have had about PMDD is if I have thought I've had BPD, bipolar, or any sort of personality disorder. And the answer is 150% yes. In fact, when my parents first took me into a psychologist to see if they could get some help for me, the psychologist actually, and this was early 90s, so bipolar disorder wasn't really a thing yet. I mean, it was just still in its beginning stages, but the psychologist suggested that I might have bipolar disorder. And my parents, but he said she has a lot of the symptoms, but not all of them. So let's just watch that before we make a decision. And it wasn't, I think that they realized without realizing it that I was kind of more cyclical than random episodes, but a lot of women who have PMDD or PME do have these disorders because they are so similar and they go in hand so easily. Another one would be like ADHD as well. So, but you have to understand that like my PMDD didn't come from any sort of traumatic experience, which is another conversation for another day. But a lot of people, they have a disorder already, and then when their hormones shift, it heightens it heightens that disorder, and that's what we call PME, premenstrual exasperation. And sorry, those are big words for my little mouth. That's why I like PME. But so PME is where you already have a disorder, and then it comes and goes in more severity as your cycle changes. But PMDD is where you don't have any sort of disorder, and then you get these sort of symptoms. So it's really important to make sure that as you are going through a diagnosis with a doctor. Now, remember, it can take up to 6 doctors in 12 years for the average female to get diagnosed with a premenstrual disorder. So few and far in between. And that's why I think that this is more rampant than we realize. So make sure you advocate for yourself. But that's why I think that we need to be careful, because we need to rule out all of these other disorders before we address the PMDD, because you could, some of these disorders have medications that help immensely with them. And so you wouldn't want to be diagnosed with PMDD and not have some sort of medication that could possibly work for you to help you live a normal life. And I would hate for somebody to have to experience PMDD knowing that they possibly could have solved, their bipolar or any sort of personality disorder with medication, instead of living with just PMDD. Now, interestingly enough, this is how I actually got put together, introduced to my co-host of the 1% podcast that I'm a part of, and his name's Sabe, because Sabe has bipolar disorder. And as we talked, our symptoms were so similar, but mine comes and goes with my cycle, and his is more in this comes and goes in different intervals and with different triggers. And so we talked about that, and we talked about the things that I am missing. And I have to say that it was nice to have a male who kind of understood what PMDD looks like inside. And that was actually super helpful. So I have this quote from a client that I wanted to share. She said, "One of the hardest things about PMDD is feeling like a different person every day. Sometimes I have wondered if I have a personality disorder because my perception of myself and who I am changes on the daily. Life is not linear, but it's especially not when you have PMDD. You can wake up confident one day and the next day you want to hide in a closet. You can feel motivated one day and you're struggling the next to find the motivation to get out of bed. You can feel positive and excited about life and the things to come one day, and the next you wish you could run away and escape everything. I'm not exaggerating when I feel like I wake up a different human each day. I really do. Sometimes I don't recognize myself and nothing seems to make me feel fulfilled." I can really relate to that. I can literally wake up in the morning and tell when my hormones have shifted into a level that my body is uncomfortable with. I have physical symptoms, but mainly it's just the mental mindset. And it is like I said, it's literally like sunglasses are put on when you're inside a house. You just cannot see things straight in so many ways. And my heart goes out to this client of mine, because I just never want somebody to feel this way at all. Excuse me. All right. The next question is, do you have a day where you fluctuate? Happy tears, or tears, happy, content, rage, and more tears, fears. We can keep going. I have moments of outbursts, and I have moments of on the floor with no energy, and I have moments of spurts of I'm going to rule this world. And I think, in all honesty, the fluctuation is the exhausting part. All of these emotions are just emotions, and but the fluctuation in how fast they can change and how much we honestly, those of us, or me, I guess I could say me, so I don't generalize, but the fluctuation is what wears me out. And the catching me off guard. I'm usually just super caught off guard, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just, and usually this is what goes on in my head. So hear me out. Like, I can't believe you just said that to your kid. If somebody said that to you, how would you feel? And so not only am I nagging on other people, but then I'm also nagging on myself versus normally, my talk might be like, okay, go try that again. I know you're doing your best, but like even my self-talk becomes in the negative sense, in those PMDD moments. This is not all the time. And most of the time, like I'm pretty good. I have worked so hard, and I'm going to give myself credit for that. I have worked so hard in recognizing when I have PMDD, when I'm not in an okay space, communicating with my kids. Okay, I might be a little bit snappy and I apologize, but like I am not in control as nearly as much as I want to be. And we don't know why yet. My girls, I am an open book with my girls because the last thing I want is for them to feel some sort of shame. I have enough of it, and this is not their fault. This is nothing that they did. And I'll tell them, like, these are things that I've had since I was a child. And most women can look back and see that they were maybe highly sensitive as they aged and grew up. But a lot of women are diagnosed more in their 20s than anything. And but I was, I had these symptoms since I was 10. So yes, there are moments that I fluctuate so much that, like I said, I even catch myself off guard. Question number 4, does it feel like sometimes the smallest issue will crush the world? And sometimes the smallest issue does crush the world. In fact, just the other month, my husband and I, I'm trying to remember what it was about. My husband and I were in the kitchen. Things had piled up, especially in PMDD. I keep a lot of things inside because I know how disordered my thinking is. And so the last thing I want is just to have a conversation because I literally cannot have one. But I think I snapped at him I think it was for the organization of the fridge. Like I had just spent an hour organizing the fridge to, number one, make myself feel better, because when I get stressed, I like to clean and organize. That helps me, just my outward environment helps me feel a little bit more in control of my inward environment. But anyway, so my husband and I lost it. And it was over the stupidest thing. And we got so far into the argument and it lasted so long that I felt even more stupid to even bring up what the stupid argument was even about. So, and then it can even be, just like an email or a text from somebody, to even answer them feels soul crushing. Like I literally, I think I've said literally a lot, but like I have to turn off my phone sometimes. And then there's that shame part in trying to respond later to say, I'm sorry, but we're responding in such a way that, it's almost too late for the conversation. And they know you saw your messages, but the response is not possible. And I know that there's a part of those world crushing things that is the anxiety that comes with trying to navigate the internal war that is going on inside of your body and your mind, and trying to outwardly express what you need to express in a way that you would on a normal day. And most women who have PMDD who are aware of it are also very aware of how they're speaking and what is going on, because they caught PMDD, they're diagnosed with that and they've had it for long enough to recognize that sometimes the reaction to the chemicals, the hormones in our body is, shifting that. So yes, the smallest issue. I mean, it could even be that I knock over a cup of water. It could even be that I my teeth are bleeding, or that a lot of the times I'll have a lot of sensory disorders when it comes to clothing or shoes, and I can't wear certain types of clothing because they irritate me because I can feel the seams. Um, so I think it becomes world crushing because I would believe that most people with PMDD are very highly sensitive to any sort of sensory stimulus. And so it becomes overwhelming to the system, and the system can't function. And so any sort of, just little pin on top of that, just makes the whole Jenga block fall. All right, so we're on to question 5. And question 5 is one I hadn't received before, but it was an interesting thing to consider for me or maybe those I was around. So the question is, are you neurodivergent? So neurodivergent means that your cognitive function is not in like a normal range. So kind of interesting way to think about that is like having PMDD is where you are maybe hormonally like that, like your hormones don't process normally in a way. Um, but this is where your brain actually doesn't process things in the typical way. So, for example, people who are neurodivergent can have dyslexia or autism. Um, but some characteristics. So I looked up characteristics of people who are neurodivergent. And some of the things that I found are struggling with reading and writing, clumsiness, finding it hard to cope with crowds, bright lights, loud, sudden noises, or social situations, difficulty with focusing or keeping still, no smiling or social responsiveness. So, if I were to go off of what I had known about being neurodivergent as the classification of labels of autistic and dyslexia and so on and so forth, I would have had said no. But when I looked up the characteristics of people who have neurodivergent thinking or functioning, absolutely. So I struggle with reading and writing. I find that I read the same thing over and over, the same line over and over, or I have absolutely no comprehension of what I've read. Even though my eyes are scanning, I just don't comprehend. And that's actually been a problem for me, especially thinking that I am broken, versus knowing that it's PMDD. And wondering why I just can't seem to get things down like other people can sometimes. And I think that that might be absolutely true in that case. The second one is clumsiness. Sometimes I like to think of the clumsiness coming from the 35% drop in cognitive function that happens. But if that's the case, then yes, I am neurodivergent because most women drop 35% in their cognitive function during their luteal phase. So yes, I would consider clumsiness. So yes, I would be neurodivergent from that. The next one, finding it hard to cope with crowds or bright lights or sudden noises or social situations. Absolutely. Um, I get scared super easy. I get massive migraines, or I can't keep my eyes open if lights are too bright. Crowds really overwhelm me. So we tend to not go anywhere that has lots of crowds. Especially during the holiday season, I get very overwhelmed. I'll get overwhelmed at the grocery store if there's too many crowds. And I don't think that let me put it this way. I think that sometimes those things are normal, right? Like sometimes our brain does process those things as sudden or more than at a higher rate of more than what we're more than what is normal. But when it comes to PMDD, those things skyrocket for me. Difficulty with focusing or keeping still? Absolutely. I have like 80 tabs out during luteal phase because I just can't seem to be able to focus. Like I have a hard time getting into the flow, especially for work, especially for writing these podcasts or writing emails back to people. I have a hard time staying in that flow. Keeping still, I do a pretty good job with that because I get so sick physically that I have no energy, and staying still tends to be okay for me, but I can't even stay focused while I'm, laying down. My brain rolls, and again, like I read the same sentence over and over and over, same line in a book over and over and over again. And then finally, no smiling or social responsiveness. I don't know about the smiling one. I tend to still be very socially capable when I am out and about, and maybe more on one-on-one. But social responsiveness, I get to a point where I just it's like there's a big wall and things just aren't connecting for me. Yes, I would say, yes, I have a hard time being super having super social responsiveness. I would say absolutely have a hard time with that. The no smiling, maybe that comes more easily for me, because I've made it more of a habit than anything else. All right. So the final question of our 6 questions are, do you feel paranoid that everyone hates you or people are mad at you? I definitely experience this while I am on PMDD, where I feel like I can walk into a room and I can hear everybody's judgmental thoughts towards me, or maybe that our energies brush against each other, and I feel a little bit of apprehension. I think that that's colored by the lens of PMDD, but I think that it's also safe to consider that PMDD can be a superpower in a way of recognizing energies. I can feel when people are more mad at me, probably because I'm more sensitive to energies, period, to sensory and stimuli, period. So the answer to that is yes. I do feel like people are upset at me, or have a grudge against me. And there are times when I do know that that is distorted thinking and I am missing the truth. But then there are other times and a lot of the times where I haven't been wrong, I've just been more sensitive to be able to feel those repercussions of maybe something I said, because I'm extra sensitive, therefore I can take in that stimuli a little bit more. I hope you guys got something out of these 6 questions and learned a little bit more as to what PMDD is like and how curious people are about it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments boxes, or shoot me an email. You can find that on my website, through Instagram. I'm happy to answer the questions that you have. Most people ask because they want affirmation of their own symptoms, of their own problems. But every once in a while, I get somebody who is super curious and fascinated by PMDD. And I love that, because that's what I'm trying to create here, is an awareness of premenstrual disorders and awareness of what they do, and to help people understand that it's not always in our control. Our mindset is not always in our control, and the things that we can do inside and outside of PMDD or any sort of PMD, to be able to manage and live a life that is healthy and thriving, and constantly bettering ourselves and constantly working on ourselves. So, all right, we will go back to our regularly scheduled scientific type studies and knowledge and education, but I hope to incorporate these PMDD Real Talks every so often for you guys. And thank you for joining me today. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening. To listen and to know. I hope you found this episode helpful and informative. Also, if you know someone who might benefit from this information and these ideas, please share this podcast and send people to the Adagio Fit website and Instagram account, where there are more resources, past podcast episodes, and the ability to take notes. Also, if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover, please let me know. I want to remind you that you are not alone. Millions of women around the world suffer remember, health is personal and possible.